I heard you, I said, my voice calmer than I felt. David stormed into the kitchen, his face red. Mom, what did you do? I can't access your bank account. You've frozen us out. I looked up from my tea. No, David, you froze yourselves out. I heard you last night, you and Chloe. You were going to borrow my husband's insurance money, the money he left to keep me safe to buy a vacation home. Chloe ran in, her voice shrill. How dare you? We were going to pay it back. We give you a home. We let you live here for free. For free. I stood up, the betrayal of 15 years finally boiling over. I've been your nanny, your chef, your housekeeper, and you thought you could just take the rest. That explosion was the final crack in a foundation that had been crumbling for years. To understand how we got here, you need to see how the story really began. The beginning wasn't a single moment, but a slow, creeping erosion of respect. It was 1,000 tiny cuts that I'd normalized as the price of being part of the family. It was the night of the dinner party, just 3 weeks ago. Chloe was up for partner at her law firm, and the dinner had to be perfect. That, of course, meant I was in the kitchen for 10 straight hours. Not Chloe, not David. Me. I'd prepped the wild-caught salmon with a dill mustard sauce, roasted the asparagus until it was perfectly tender crisp, and decanted 3 bottles of a hideously expensive red wine David had bought. From the kitchen, I could hear the party, but I wasn't part of it. I was the backstage manager, the invisible engine. I heard Chloe's bright, brittle laugh. Oh, this house, it's a project, but David and I just make it work. It's all about teamwork. I nearly dropped the serving platter. Teamwork. I saw myself in the reflection of the dark oven door. I was 65, wearing a crisp white apron. My uniform and my hair was pulled back in a tight, practical bun. I looked less like the mother of the house and more like the hired help. Later that night, long after the last partner had left, I was the one scrubbing the wine rings off the quartz countertop. David and Chloe had gone upstairs, murmuring about crushing it and making partner. I finished the last dish, hung the damp towel, and finally, at midnight, padded down the hallway to my room. My room wasn't really a bedroom. It was the flex space over the garage. It was small, but it was tidy. It was mine. On the nightstand sat my husband Mark's old watch. It was a simple steel-banded Timex, nothing fancy. But it was the one thing he'd worn every single day. When he died 15 years ago, that watch and his life insurance policy were all I had left. The policy wasn't a lottery win. It was the result of a man who worked 40 years at a desk job, paying his premiums every month, terrified I'd be left with nothing. That money was my never-again fund. Never again would I be at the mercy of someone else. It was my independence, my dignity, my final promise from him. It sat in a high-yield savings account, a silent fortress. I was just about to turn off the light when I heard them. Their voices were sharp, cutting through the heavy silence of the house. They were in the main hallway, right outside my door, clearly thinking I was asleep. David, the seller will not wait, Chloe hissed. Her voice was stripped of all its party day charm. This was the real Chloe. We have to wire the final $150,000 for the lake house by Monday, or we lose it. We lose our deposit. Everything. I know. David's voice was a stressed, low whine. I know, Chloe. I'm moving everything I can from the joint account, but I'm short. The market's down. It's too fast. There was a long, terrible silence. I held my breath. I knew, with a sinking, cold dread, what was coming next. This is insane, Chloe said, her voice dropping to a low, pragmatic hum. We are panicking, and the solution is sleeping 20 feet away. Don't, David said, his voice weak. Just don't. Don't what? Be smart? Your mother, she's sitting on that entire insurance payout from your father. It's over $200,000. It's just sitting there, David, earning mediocre interest. It's her money, Chloe. It's from Dad. And what is she doing with it? Chloe's voice suddenly spiked with a venom that made my stomach clench. What is she saving it for? A cruise? A rainy day? She lives here for free, David. We pay the mortgage. We buy the groceries. We are her rainy day. She owes us this. We're giving her a life. For free. The words echoed in the small room. I thought of the 15 years of packed school lunches for my grandson Lucas. The thousands of dinners, just like the one tonight. The endless loads of laundry. The doctor's appointments I took Lucas to, the PTA meetings I attended because David and Chloe were slammed. I thought of the career I'd given up my job as an office manager to move in and become their unpaid full-time nanny so they could build their high-powered careers. All of that, in their eyes, added up to for free. David was wavering. I could hear it in his silence. I can't just ask her, Chloe. She'll say no. She'll say it's for, I don't know, an emergency. You know how she is about that money. Then don't ask. The words were so cold, so simple, they cut right through the door. What? David whispered. Don't ask, Chloe repeated, her voice now a clinical, conspiratorial whisper. You're the one who set up her banking app, remember? You told her it was too complicated and you'd handle her digital security. She has no idea how it works. She probably still thinks she has to go into a branch to move money. She's 65, David. She's not, like us. I stared, unseeing, at the wall. Just borrow it, Chloe said, her voice warming up, selling the idea. An internal transfer, $150,000, right from her savings to our account. We use it for the down payment. Our bonuses hit in 6 months. We pay it back, with a little interest if it makes you feel better. She will never know. It's clean. It's easy. There was a long pause. I could picture David, running a hand through his hair, torn between the last shred of his conscience and the gleaming, beautiful lake house his wife was dangling in front of him. It's the only way, Chloe whispered. It's easy. I heard their footsteps retreat down the hall. A door clicked shut, and I was left in the total suffocating silence. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even shaking. I felt a strange, cold clarity, the kind you get when the fog you've been living in for a decade is suddenly, brutally burned away. She has no idea how it works, I whispered to myself. I looked at Mark's old watch on my nightstand. They weren't just planning to steal my money. They were planning to steal my husband's final gift, my independence, my one-word answer to a world that tried to make me small. I reached over and picked up my smartphone. It was a new model, one David and Chloe probably assumed I just used for Facebook and weather. My thumb hovered over the icon for the very same banking app they were talking about. They think I'm a fool, I thought, the ice in my veins turning to steel. They think I'm just some old woman who doesn't understand the world they built. I opened the app. They're about to find out how wrong they are. My thumb hovered over the glowing icon, the blue and white logo of the bank, but I didn't tap it. Not yet. I looked around my room, this perfect beige $1 million house, and this was my corner of it, the flex space over the garage. It was a room designed to be anything, which meant it was nothing. It was an office, a guest room, a storage space. It was where they put me. My eyes landed on Mark's watch, sitting on the nightstand. A simple, steel Timex. It hadn't ticked in a decade, but I kept it because it was a piece of the man I'd loved and a reminder of the life I'd had. That watch. It was from my old life. The one before this. 15 years ago, I wasn't Mom, the household appliance. I was Eleanor Vaughn, the senior office manager for a mid-sized logistics firm. I wore sharp pantsuits and commanded a staff of 12. I ran budgets, I negotiated with vendors, I managed personalities. I was good at it. I had a 401k, my own condo, and a life I had built. Then, the hospital. The sterile, chemical smell that clings to everything. The rhythmic, agonizing beep of the machines. Mark, pale against the starched white pillows, his hand cool in mine. He'd rasped, his voice thin. Ellie, that policy. It's for you. Don't let anyone, not even David, tell you what to do with it. It's your freedom. Promise me. I'd promised. 3 months after the funeral, I was standing in my condo, surrounded by packing boxes. I was grieving, but I was functional. I had a plan. I'd downsize, maybe do some consulting. I'd be okay. Then David and a very pregnant Chloe showed up at my door. They looked like they hadn't slept in a week. Mom, David began, and I could hear the desperation in his voice. We're drowning. The baby's coming. Chloe's trying to make junior partner. I'm at the new firm. We can't afford a full-time nanny and a mortgage. Not a good one. Not in a good school district. Chloe, her hands cradling her stomach, added, Eleanor, it would just be for a few years. Just until Lucas is in school. We need you. We can't do this without you." I looked at their young, terrified faces. My son, my only child. I looked at the packing boxes that represented my new, solitary life. And I made my choice. I sold my condo. I cashed out my own retirement accounts. I took the sacred nest egg Mark had left me, his final act of love, and I didn't invest it in the stock market. I invested it in them. A few years turned into 15. Lucas wasn't just in school. He was 15 years old and on the high school debate team. Chloe wasn't a junior partner. She was on the letterhead. David wasn't at the new firm. He was a senior VP. And I was the invisible foundation that made it all possible. I was the one who was there when Lucas took his first steps. I was the one who knew he was allergic to red dye #40. I was the one who attended the PTA meetings and parent-teacher conferences because David and Chloe were slammed with work. I was the one who did the Costco runs, who planned the Thanksgiving dinners, who managed the contractors when they remodeled the kitchen, who made sure the bills were paid on time, who packed the lunches, and who cooked the salmon for the partners' dinner. They got promotions, they got a bigger house, they got 2 new Audis in the driveway. I got the flex space. I was the teamwork Chloe had bragged about. I was the reason they could make it work. And my salary for 15 years of 24/7 labor? A room and board. For free. I looked back at my phone. The screen had gone dark. They hadn't just forgotten my sacrifice. They had calculated it, filed it under overhead, and valued it at 0. And now, after consuming my labor for 15 years, they were coming to drain the principal. My hand was perfectly steady as I tapped the screen and woke the phone. Chloe was right about one thing. This was easy. It was easy because I wasn't just a 65-year-old woman they dismissed as a technophobe. I was a 65-year-old woman who had spent 25 years as an office manager. I knew how to read a balance sheet. I knew how to manage assets. And I knew, better than anyone, when it was time to cut my losses. But you don't just detonate the foundation of your life, your relationship with your only son, in the middle of the night on a whim. Unless, of course, you finally realize you're not detonating anything. You're just stepping away from a building that's been collapsing in slow motion for 15 years. My hand was shaking, but it wasn't the palsy of an old, frightened woman. It was the low, electric hum of adrenaline. The kind I used to get right before a big quarterly audit, back when I was Eleanor Vaughn, office manager. Back when I had a name other than Mom. I stood up from the bed, my feet silent on the plush carpet. I walked to the door of my flex space and turned the small brassy lock. The click was tiny, almost soundless in the heavy quiet of the million-dollar house. But to me, it sounded like a gavel. The first, final judgment. I picked up my smartphone. The screen was cool and smooth against my palm. I swiped, and my contacts list appeared. My thumb scrolled past Chloe office, David, mobile, Lucas, debate coach, Lucas, school, all the numbers that defined my 15 years of service. I kept scrolling, all the way down to B, Brenda. My finger hovered over her name. Brenda and I have been friends for 40 years, ever since we were both young moms in a Mommy and Me class, bonded by sleeplessness and cheap coffee. We were opposites. I was the peacemaker, the one who always tried to see the best in people. Brenda was the one who saw the balance sheet. She became a certified public accountant, a quiet shark in a sensible skirt, a woman who could make a corporate hotshot cry with a single well-placed question about his expense report. She was the one who held my hand at Mark's funeral, and she was the only one who had the guts to tell me I was being a sentimental idiot for selling my condo 15 years ago. "Eleanor, you're not an asset to them," she'd told me, her voice sharp over the rim of a margarita glass just last summer. We were at an outdoor patio, celebrating her retirement. "You're a utility, and they're going to keep using you until the service is cut off. What's your exit strategy, Ellie? What happens when Lucas is in college and they don't need a full-time free nanny anymore?" I'd been genuinely shocked. I'd stammered, "David would never. He's my son." Brenda had just stared at me. David is his father's son. All charm, no spine, and that wife of his. She's not just a lawyer, she's a predator. She's all teeth and ambition. "You're living in a shark tank, honey, and you're chum." The words had stung, but they'd stuck. The real wake-up call, the one that made me finally listen, came 6 months ago. It was Thanksgiving. The whole family was there. David, flushed with wine and self-satisfaction, was holding court at the head of the table. He'd just closed a big deal. And the best part, he'd said, raising his glass, is we're finally looking at lake houses. A little place up on Winnie, something for the whole family. Chloe had smiled, a tight, polished smile. Of course, even with the new bonus, the down payments are absurd. And then David had looked at me, right down the table, with a slick, joking smile. Well, we've always got Mom's nest egg, right? What's the point of having all that cash sitting in a savings account? Money's supposed to work for you, Mom. He'd laughed. Chloe had laughed. And I'd felt the blood drain from my face. Mark's watch, which I wore on Thanksgiving, suddenly felt ice cold on my wrist. It wasn't a joke. It was a test. A trial balloon to see how I'd react. I'd forced a smile. That's Mark's money, David. It's for an emergency. What's a bigger emergency than a missed opportunity? He'd shot back, still smiling. The table went quiet. He'd shown his hand. He saw my husband's legacy, my one piece of freedom, as his personal line of credit. 2 days later, I was in Brenda's kitchen. He said that, she'd asked, her mug of tea halfway to her lips. He did. She'd put the mug down. Okay, it's time. We're making a plan. A contingency plan for when, not if, they come for it. We'll call it the Gray Fox Plan, because they think you're a silver-haired grandma but you're a fox, and you're smarter than both of them put together. I'd laughed then, a shaky, nervous laugh. It had seemed so dramatic, so disloyal. Now standing in my room, the lock clicked, my son's words still echoing in my ears. It's easy. It wasn't disloyal. It was survival. I pressed call. It rang once, maybe twice. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, Eleanor. Brenda's voice came, instantly awake, sharp as broken glass. Tell me, Brenda, I whispered, my voice thick. It's time. They're doing it. A heavy, static-filled sigh on the other end. No surprise. Just grim, weary confirmation. The lake house. Yes, they're going for the account. Tonight. Chloe's idea. David's. David's going along with it. They're going to borrow it. That's the word she used. Borrow. Borrow. Brenda spat the word, and I could hear the venom in it. Like you're a piggy bank. Those ungrateful, entitled, parasitic. Okay. I heard her sit up, the sound of bedsheets rustling. Okay, Gray Fox is a go. Are you ready for this? There's no going back, Ellie. You know that, right? This is the end of the line. I looked at Mark's watch on the nightstand. The polished steel seemed to glow in the dark. It's your freedom. Promise me. I know, I said, my voice clearing, the ice in my veins turning to steel. He told me it was my freedom, Bren. He told me. They're not just taking my money. They're taking his last promise. Then let's get that freedom for you, Brenda said, and her voice was all business now. The CPA was in. You know what to do. Stage 1. Lock the fortress. You've got the app. You remember the steps I showed you. I remember, I said. Open the new checking, transfer, remove user, change passwords, 2-factor. Good. Then, stage 2. Immediately after, you call the bank's 24-hour fraud line. You use the script. I've lost my card. I'm worried my account is compromised. I need an immediate freeze on all transactions and authorizations. That puts a 48-hour firewall on everything, no matter what he tries. They think I'm just some sweet old lady, I whispered, the rage finally bubbling up, cold and pure. Chloe said. She said, I have no idea how it works. I know. They've been living with a senior office manager for 15 years and they think you're a housewife, Brenda said. They've mistaken kindness for weakness, Ellie. It's the last mistake they'll make. They'll know better by morning, I said. That's my girl. Now, get to work. Lock it all down. Every single penny. I'll be at your front door at 9 a.m. sharp to pick you up. And I'm not bringing coffee, I'm bringing paperwork. Paperwork. Yes. I called that realtor I know at Silver Creek Estates. The 55-plus community? There's a 2-bedroom corner unit that just came on the market. It has a balcony. We have a 10 to 30 a.m. showing. My breath caught. Brenda, No, thank yous. No, I'm sorries. No, it's too fast. This is day 1 of your new life, Eleanor. This isn't an escape. It's an extraction. Now, go, lock it down. And Ellie. Yes, I am so, so proud of you. She hung up. I stood there for a moment in the silence. 9 a.m. A realtor. A new home. This wasn't just a plan. It was a schedule. I turned back to my phone. The banking app icon glowed, a blue and white doorway to my future. I wasn't just a 6'5" woman in a flex space. I was the gray fox. And the hunt was on. I sat on the edge of my bed, the small, beige room illuminated only by the cool white glow of the smartphone screen. This wasn't a flex space anymore. It was a command center. And the woman they thought was a technological dinosaur was about to execute a full systems override. Chloe's voice echoed in my head, dripping with condescension. She has no idea how it works. The casual, dismissive arrogance of it. David was the one who'd set up the app for me, yes. I remembered him sitting right here, on the edge of this very bed, his voice full of that patient, patronizing tone he used when he was explaining something complicated to his old mom. "Look, Mom, it's easy," he'd said, tapping the screen. "You just tap this big green button to see your balance. But don't touch anything else. It's all linked. Just let me handle the digital security, okay? It's just too complicated." I remembered just nodding, smiling that vague, pleasant smile I'd perfected, the smile of the invisible woman. "Whatever you think is best, dear." I didn't tell him that as a senior office manager, I had been the one to transition our entire company of 50 people from paper ledgers to QuickBooks Online. I didn't tell him I'd managed digital payroll, 401k contributions, and complex vendor accounts when he was still struggling with high school algebra. I just let him feel smart. I had learned over 15 long years that my competence made them uncomfortable. My silence, my perceived ineptitude, was what made me useful. My thumb, steady and sure, bypassed the big green check balance button he'd shown me. I swiped right past the quick pay feature. I went straight to the administrative settings, the guts of the app he assumed I'd never find. My fingers didn't even hesitate. Stage 1. Build the new fortress. Menu is greater than open, new account is greater than premier checking. The app, friendly and bright, asked a few simple questions. It took less than 60 seconds. A new account number flashed on the screen. Account number, 8,814. My new fortress. Empty, clean, and mine. Now, to move the gold. This was the hard part, the part that made my throat tighten. I navigated back to the main screen. I saw my high-yield savings account. The balance, $203,450.18. Mark's money. Every cent was a memory. Every cent was a promise. It's your freedom, Ellie. This wasn't just a number. It was the 40 years he'd spent at a desk, paying premiums, terrified I'd be left with nothing. It was the future he'd bought for me. And his son, our son, was about to steal it for a lake house. Menu is greater than transfers is greater than from. High-yield savings number, 2,109, is greater than 2. Premier checking number, 8,814. I paused at the amount. Should I just move the $150,000 they planned to borrow? Leave the rest as a, what? A peace offering? No, Brenda was right. This wasn't a negotiation. It was an extraction. They didn't just want $150,000. They wanted access. They wanted to know the piggy bank was there, ready to be cracked open whenever their version of an opportunity or emergency came up. My fingers typed in the full amount. $203,450.18. The house was dead quiet. Not a floorboard creaked. The only sound was the frantic, thudding drumbeat of my own heart, a sound so loud I was sure they could hear it through the walls. I pressed confirm transfer. The little blue circle spun for a second, an eternity. Transaction successful. I watched the balance on the savings account, the one David had full access to, drop to $0. I couldn't leave it empty. That might trigger an alert. I quickly transferred $1,000 back in, just enough to look plausible. Let them see that, and wonder. Now, the most important part, the severance. Menu is greater than security, and settings is greater than manage authorized users. There he was. David M. Vaughn. Status, full access. I remembered the day I added him, 5 years ago. I'd had a terrible bout of the flu, the kind that puts you in bed for a week. He'd insisted. What if you're in the hospital, Mom? What if someone needs to pay your bills? It's just for an emergency, a real emergency. My God. I saw it all so clearly now. The Thanksgiving comment. The joking about my nest egg. This wasn't a new idea. They'd been priming the pump. They'd been waiting for the right emergency. And here it was, their emergency, not mine. My thumb hovered over his name. This was the click that really ended it. This was the lock on the door of my 15-year prison. This was the final, quiet goodbye to the son I thought I had. This was for the son who had let his wife call his mother a utility. I looked at Mark's watch, its face dark on the nightstand. I'm sorry, Mark. I'm sorry I let it get this far. I took a deep, steadying breath. Tap. David M. Vaughn is greater than remove user. A new screen popped up. Are you sure you want to permanently remove this user's access? My voice was a whisper in the dark room. Yes. I pressed confirm. User successfully removed. A feeling of absolute cold lightness washed over me. One last thing. Menu is greater than security is greater than change password. My old password was Lucas2010. The year my grandson was born. The year my new life of service began. I deleted it. My new password, Mark Freedom 1988. The year Mark and I bought our first home. Enable two-factor authentication. Is greater than send code to my cell phone, not David's, not the home email account he monitored, just mine. The digital fortress was built, the money was safe, the authorized user was a ghost, the walls were up. Now, for stage 2, the firewall. I closed the banking app and opened my phone's dialer. I found the 24/7 fraud line Brenda had made me save in my contacts. I glanced at the clock. 1:47 a.m. They were just one floor below me, sleeping, dreaming of their lake house, dreaming of my money. My heart was hammering again, a frantic bird in my chest. What if they heard me? I pulled the heavy comforter from my bed, draped it over my head and the phone, and created a small, soundproof tent, just like I used to do when Lucas was a baby and I had to take a call during his nap. I pressed the number. It rang once. Unity Bank, 24-hour fraud and security. This is Aisha. How can I help you? The voice was sleepy, but professional. I took a breath. Time to be the person they all thought I was, a confused, sweet, slightly dotty old woman. Oh, hello, Aisha. I'm so sorry to call this late. My name is Eleanor Vaughn. I think I did something just terrible. I let my voice quaver. Just a little. The old office manager knew how to play a role. I was at the grocery store today. The big Costco, you know? And I can't find my debit card. I've looked everywhere. In my purse, the car. I'm just sick about it. And I'm so worried. I'm worried someone might have, gotten into my account. I'm not very good with these things. Ma'am, it's okay. Aisha's voice was instantly kind, reassuring. Don't worry, Mrs. Vaughn. You did exactly the right thing by calling immediately. I'm going to put an immediate freeze on that card. No one will be able to use it. Oh, thank you, bless you, I said, adding a little wobble. But my son, David, he helps me with my accounts. He sometimes moves money for me. What if the person who found my card, what if they try to transfer something? Online? I'm just terrified. I understand completely, she said. Let's put a full 48-hour security freeze on all external and internal transfers on all your accounts, just to be safe. We call it a level 3 security lock. Nothing moves in or out, online or by phone, without you calling back, verifying your identity, and answering a new set of security questions. Does that sound good? It sounded perfect. Oh yes, please, I breathed. A level 3. That sounds so safe. Thank you, Aisha. You've given me such peace of mind. We ended the call. I answered her questions. I hung up. I sat there, under the covers, in the darkness, and the complete warm silence. The trap was set. The money was safe. The confused old lady had just locked her account so tightly that even the bank manager couldn't get in. I pulled the covers off my head. The room was cold. I felt empty. But I also felt a little lighter than I had been. I didn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. I just sat in the armchair by the window, watching the black sky turn to charcoal, then purple, then a wet, gray dawn. I watched the neighborhood wake up. The sprinklers started at 6 a.m., hissing on the neatly trimmed lawns. The first newspaper delivery sounded in the driveway. I was dressed, black slacks, comfy loafers, and my favorite blue silk blouse. I even wore a little mascara. I felt like I was preparing for a board meeting or a funeral, maybe both. At 7:15 a.m., I heard the first sounds from downstairs, the hiss of the Nespresso machine, their Saturday morning ritual. I picked up my small, packed overnight bag, the one I'd prepared while they were sleeping, and placed it by my door. Then I walked out of my flex space. My head held high, and went downstairs. They were in the kitchen, their backs to me. They were both in their expensive weekend athleisure wear, looking like a catalog for a lifestyle I had funded but was never invited to join. David was leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone. Chloe was at their large iMac on the kitchen desk, the one they used for household finances. "Did you do it?" Chloe asked, her voice low and tight. "Not yet," David muttered, not looking up from his phone. "I wanted to wait until, she was busy, making breakfast or something." "David, the wire has to go out before noon to clear by Monday. Do it now. She's probably still asleep." I stood there in the doorway, watching them. They hadn't heard me. I was so practiced at being invisible that I had become, literally, unseen. "It just feels weird," David said. "What feels weird?" Chloe snapped, her patience gone. "The lake house? Or finally making a smart financial move?" "It's borrowing, David. Stop being so sentimental. Just log in, make the transfer, and let's go for our run." Okay, fine. I watched my son, the boy whose diapers I'd changed, whose college tuition I'd helped pay for, sit down at the computer. I watched him open the bank's website. I didn't say anything. I just walked, silent as a ghost, to the Nespresso machine. I took a mug from the cabinet, my mug, a simple ceramic one I'd bought at a garage sale, and placed it under the spout. The sudden loud hiss and gurgle of the machine made David jump. He spun around in the chair. "Mom! God, you scared me." "Good morning, David." "Chloe," I said, my voice perfectly level. I turned my back to them and watched the cup fill with dark, bitter coffee. "Morning, Mom," David said, his voice instantly trying to sound normal. Too normal. "You're up early." "I had a lot on my mind," I said. I didn't turn around. I heard Chloe say, "David, just do it." I heard the clack, clack, clack of the keyboard. I heard him type in the password, Lucas2010, the one I had just changed. I heard a quiet thud as his finger hit the enter key. I sipped my coffee. It was scalding hot, but I didn't flinch. "What the?" David muttered. I heard him clack, clack, clack again, harder this time. Thud. "Password incorrect," he said, his voice rising in confusion. "That's not right. I know that's the password." "You typed it wrong, idiot," Chloe hissed. "Move over." I heard the chair scrape as she pushed him aside. I still hadn't turned around. I was just listening to the sound of their arrogance hitting the firewall I'd built in the dark. Clack, clack, clack. Thud. "It's not working." Chloe's voice was sharp, a tiny thread of panic in it. "Password incorrect." "Did she? Do you think she changed it?" "Mom," David said. "Mom, did you change your banking password?" I turned around slowly, holding my mug in both hands. I leaned back against the counter. They were both staring at the screen, and then at me, their faces a perfect picture of confusion and dawning horror. "Why would I do that, David?" I asked. "I don't know, just let me try the app." David grabbed his phone, his thumb flying across the screen. I'll just reset it from my phone. "I'm still an authorized user, He stopped. He was staring at his phone, his face going pale. "What?" Chloe demanded. "What is it?" I'm not an authorized user." He looked up at me, his eyes wide, the reality of the situation finally slamming into him. "Mom? What's going on?" "It says I'm not an authorized user. It says the account is frozen. It's a level 3 security lock, actually," I said, taking another sip of coffee. "I lost my debit card at Costco yesterday. I was so worried." Chloe stood up. The mask was gone. The polite daughter-in-law was gone. The shark was here. What did you do?" she breathed. "I called the bank," I said. "I told them I was terrified someone might get in, someone who shouldn't be there, someone who might try to transfer things. They were very helpful." David looked from me to Chloe and back again. He was scrambling, trying to find a foothold. "Mom, this is a misunderstanding. You locked me out. I'm the one who helps you. I need to. We have to. You have to call them and fix this. Right now." "Fix what, David?" "The account. I can't access it. You've frozen us out." I put my coffee mug down on the counter. The small ceramic clink was the only sound in the $1,000,000 kitchen. It was the sound of the end. I looked him right in the eye. "No, David," I said. "You froze yourselves out. I heard you last night. Ours." I watched the clock on my phone. 2:03 a.m. For 15 years I had lived in their house, by their rules, on their schedule. Tonight, for the first time, they were living in mine. They just didn't know it yet. All they had to do was wake up. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I just sat in the armchair by the window, my small overnight bag packed and waiting by the door. I watched the black sky turn to charcoal, then to a bruised, watery purple. I watched the sprinklers kick on at 6 a.m., hissing across the perfect, manicured lawns of the neighborhood. The first paper delivery thumped onto the driveway. The world was waking up to a normal Saturday. But in this house, a silent war was about to be declared. I was fully dressed. Black slacks, a comfortable pair of loafers, and my favorite blue silk blouse. I'd even put on mascara. I felt like I was preparing for a board meeting, or maybe a funeral, perhaps both. At 7:15 a.m., I heard the first sounds from downstairs, the hydraulic hiss and gurgle of the Nespresso machine. Their Saturday morning ritual, the one that always preceded their long run in their matching, expensive athleisure wear. I picked up my bag, walked out of my flex space, and went downstairs. They were in the kitchen, their backs to me. They were exactly as I'd pictured, sleek, toned, and looking like a catalog for a lifestyle I had funded but was never invited to join. David was leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone. Chloe was at their large iMac on the kitchen desk, the one they used for household finances. "Did you do it?" Chloe asked, her voice low and tight. "Not yet," David muttered, not looking up from his phone. "I wanted to wait until, she was busy, making breakfast or something. It feels weird." "David, the wire has to go out before noon to clear by Monday," Chloe snapped, her patience gone. "What feels weird, the lake house, or finally making a smart financial move? It's borrowing. Stop being so sentimental. She's probably still asleep. Just log in, make the transfer, and let's go for our run." Okay, fine." I stood there in the arched doorway, silent. I was so practiced at being invisible that I had become, literally, unseen. I watched my son, the boy whose diapers I'd changed, whose college tuition I'd helped pay for, sit down at the computer. I watched him open the bank's website. I didn't say anything. I just walked, my loafers silent on the polished hardwood, to the Nespresso machine. I took a mug from the cabinet, my mug, a simple ceramic one I'd bought at a garage sale, and placed it under the spout. The sudden, loud hiss of the machine made David jump, his shoulders hunching. He spun around in the chair. "Mom, God, you scared me." "Good morning, David." "Chloe," I said, my voice perfectly level. I turned my back to them and watched the cup fill with dark, bitter coffee. "Morning, Mom," David said, his voice instantly trying to sound normal. Too normal. You're up early." "I had a lot on my mind," I said. I didn't turn around. I just listened. I heard Chloe whisper, "Just do it." I heard the clack, clack, clack of the keyboard. I heard him type in the password Lucas2010, the one I had changed hours ago. I heard a quiet thud as his finger hit the enter key. I sipped my coffee. It was scalding hot, but I didn't flinch. The heat grounded me. "What the?" David muttered. I heard him clack, clack, clack again. Harder this time. Thud. "Password incorrect," he said, his voice rising in confusion. That's not right. I know that's the password." "You typed it wrong, idiot," Chloe hissed. She shoved the chair back and pushed him aside. "Move over." I still hadn't turned around. I was just listening to the sound of their supreme arrogance hitting the digital firewall I'd built in the dark. Clack, 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 clack. Thud. It's not working. Chloe's voice was sharp now, a tiny thread of panic pulling it taut. Password incorrect. Did she? Do you think she changed it? Mom, David said, his voice tight. Mom, did you change your banking password? I turned around slowly, holding my mug in both hands. I leaned back against the counter. They were both staring at the screen, and then at me, their faces a perfect frozen picture of confusion and dawning horror. Why would I do that, David? I asked, my voice mild. I don't know, just let me try the app. David scrambled for his phone, his thumb flying across the screen. I'll just reset it from my phone. I'm still an authorized user, He stopped. His thumb froze. He was staring at his phone, his face draining of all color. He looked like he'd been punched. What? Chloe demanded. What is it? I'm not an authorized user. He looked up at me, his eyes wide, the reality of the situation finally slamming into him. Mom? What's going on? It says I'm not an authorized user. It says the account is frozen. It's a level 3 security lock, actually, I said, taking another sip of coffee. I was so worried. I told them I lost my debit card at Costco yesterday. I was just terrified someone might try to transfer something. They were very helpful. Chloe stood up, her face white. The mask was gone. The polite, charming, high-powered daughter-in-law was gone. The shark was here. You. What did you do? She breathed. I called the bank, I said simply. I told them I was afraid. I told them I needed to be safe. Mom, this is a misunderstanding, David stammered, his hands fluttering. He was trying to find a narrative, a way to make this my mistake. You locked me out. I'm the one who helps you. I need to. We have to. You have to call them and fix this. Right now. Fix what, David? The account. I can't access it. You've frozen us out. I put my coffee mug down on the gleaming quartz counter. The small ceramic clink was the only sound in the $1 million kitchen. It was the sound of the end. I looked my son right in the eye. No, David, I said, and my voice was no longer the voice of Mom. It was the voice of Eleanor Vaughn, the office manager, the woman who ran the audits. You froze yourselves out. I heard you last night. I felt lighter than I had in 15 years, but I also felt the cold, sharp clarity of a soldier on the morning of a battle. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat in the single armchair in my flex space, my small overnight bag packed and zipped at my feet. I watched the black sky turn to charcoal, then to a bruised, watery purple. I watched the sprinklers kick on at 6 a.m., hissing across the perfect manicured lawns of the neighborhood. The world was waking up to a normal Saturday, but in this house, a silent fuse was burning. I was fully dressed, black slacks, a comfortable pair of loafers, and my favorite blue silk blouse. I'd even put on mascara. I felt like I was preparing for a board meeting, or a funeral, maybe both. At 8:30 a.m., I heard their voices, not from the kitchen, from their home office, just down the hall. Their weekend ritual was run, coffee, finances. They were prompt. I stood, my bag in hand, and moved to my locked bedroom door. I didn't need to put my ear to it. Their voices were sharp, cutting through the quiet. Okay, let's get this done, I heard Chloe say, her voice brisk. I want that wire confirmation sent to the realtor before we go to the lake. It shows we're serious. Right, David muttered. I pictured him in his expensive leather chair, the one I wasn't allowed to sit in, opening the bank's website. Okay, logging in. Here we go. A pause. I listened to the silence. I heard the clack, clack, clack of the keyboard. Him typing in Lucas2010, the password I'd used for a decade. The password that was now a ghost. A quiet thud as his finger hit the enter key. What? David's voice, confused. I heard him clack, clack, clack again, harder this time. Thud. Password incorrect, he said, his voice rising in disbelief. That's not right. I know that's the password. I set it up myself. You typed it wrong, you idiot, Chloe snapped. The patience of the corporate lawyer was gone. You're probably hitting the caps lock. Just let me do it. I heard the chair scrape, more clacking, a more aggressive thud. It's not working. Chloe's voice was sharp, a tiny thread of panic pulling it taut. Password incorrect. What is wrong with this thing? Do you think she changed it? Mom? Change her password. David's laugh was hollow, incredulous. She still asks me to reset her Netflix. She has no idea how. No, the site must be down. This is a disaster. Shut up, David. Let me try the app. I'll just reset it from your phone. You're still an authorized user. You can just... Her voice trailed off. This silence was different. It wasn't a pause. It was a void. I heard David, his voice small. What? What is it? You're not. I'm not what? You're not an authorized user, Chloe said, her voice a flat, cold, stunned whisper. She removed you. What? That's impossible. Let me see. I heard a frantic scrambling, the sound of the phone being snatched. I could picture David, his thumb flying across the screen, his face draining of all color. Chloe, it's frozen. The whole account. It says, Level 3 security lock. What is that? What did she do? She called them. Chloe's voice was barely a breath, the shark suddenly realizing it was in a tank. The old woman, she called the bank. Mom did this. The pure, unadulterated shock in my son's voice was the first taste of victory. The confused old woman had just checked him, and his queen. This is impossible, he stammered. This has to be a mistake. It's not a mistake, David. Chloe's voice was rising, hysteria creeping in. She did this. That bitch. She's trying to ruin us. We're going to lose the deposit. Then I heard it. The scrape of a chair being thrown back. Heavy, pounding footsteps in the hall. They were coming for me. I took a deep breath, gripped the handle of my suitcase, and turned the lock on my door. I was ready. The words hung in the air, heavy and toxic, sucking all the oxygen from the room. I heard you last night. David's face, which had been pale with confusion, collapsed. It was the face of a little boy who had just been caught, his hand not just in the cookie jar, but setting the whole kitchen on fire. He looked from me to Chloe and back again, his mouth opening and closing, no sound coming out. Chloe, however. Chloe was different. She wasn't a child caught in a lie. She was a predator who had just been outmaneuvered. Her shock lasted a fraction of a second before it hardened into something cold and furious. You were spying on us, she hissed, taking a step forward. You were outside our door, listening. Is that what you're focused on? I asked. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence of the kitchen. Not that you were planning to commit grand theft. You're angry you got caught. It wasn't theft. David finally found his voice. It was a pathetic, cracking whine. Mom, it wasn't like that. It was a loan. We were just going to borrow it. We were going to pay it back. Pay it back. I almost laughed. It was a cold, dry sound that didn't belong to me. You were going to borrow my husband's legacy, the money he left for my future, without my permission. And you, Chloe. You were going to do it because I had no idea how it worked, because I'm just a confused old woman. Oh, stop the poor me act, Eleanor, Chloe snapped, her hands clenching into fists on the quartz countertop. You're living in our house. You don't pay a dime of the mortgage. You don't pay for the groceries, the utilities, the taxes. We give you a life. We give you a roof over your head. And you're going to stand there and try to sabotage us over a simple cash flow problem. A cash flow problem, I repeated. Yes, we were going to pay it back with interest. But you had to be dramatic. You had to run to the bank, like some child, and freeze everything. You've probably just cost us our deposit. Do you have any idea what you've done? She was right about one thing. They had no idea what I'd done. You're right, Chloe, I said. Let's talk about the roof over my head. Let's talk about what I cost you. I set my coffee mug down. I'd put on Mark's watch that morning, the simple, steel-banded Timex. It felt cool and heavy on my wrist, a piece of armor. I tapped its face. Not to check the time, but just to feel it. To feel him. Let's run the numbers, shall we? You're a lawyer. You love billable hours. Let's do an invoice. What are you talking about? David stammered. I've been your full-time nanny for 15 years, I said, my voice as calm and clear as an auditor's. What's the going rate for a 24/7 live-in nanny in this zip code, Chloe? A good one, with 15 years of experience? Someone who does homework, who knows about the food allergies, who attends the PTA meetings? Mom, that's different, David said, shaking his head. Different how, David? Because I was family. Family was just the word you used for free. But let's keep going. I've also been your household manager. I schedule the plumbers, the electricians, the landscapers. I do the Costco runs. I manage the pantry. That's another salary. And I've been your private chef. 3 meals a day for you, your son, and, for the last 10 years, for all of your partners' dinners, your networking events, your holiday parties. What do you think that's worth? Chloe's face was white. She was silent. For the first time, she was silent. Let's be conservative, I continued, pacing the kitchen floor, the one I had chosen the tile for. Let's say $100,000 a year for all 3 jobs. And that's a bargain. We'll multiply that by 15 years. What does that come to, Chloe? She just stared at me. $1.5 million, I said. That is my billable hours. That is the career I gave up. That is the income I brought into this house, not in cash but in labor. Labor that enabled you, Chloe, to be at the office until 10 p.m., to make partner. Labor that enabled you, David, to travel for your firm and build your career. You didn't give me a free room. I bought you this house. I paid for your Audis. I paid for the lake house you're about to lose. I paid for it all with 15 years of my life. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the hum of the stainless steel refrigerator. I invested my life in this family, I said, my voice finally shaking, not with weakness, but with a rage so deep it had taken 15 years to surface. And the money in that account, Mark's money, that was the one thing, the only thing, that was mine. It was my independence. It was my promise to him. It was my never-again fund. And you looked at it, after all of that, and saw it as just an untapped asset. Another line of credit you were entitled to. I looked at my son. His face was ashen. He was finally seeing me. Not as Mom, the warm, soft appliance that produced meals and clean laundry. He was seeing Eleanor Vaughn, and she was presenting him with the bill. So, no, David, I said, my voice quiet again. I am not going to fix this. I am not calling the bank. That money, the money you can't access, is gone. It's in a new account, under a new password, with one user, me. The level 3 lock was just a precaution, to ensure a smooth transition. A transition, David whispered. The bank, I said, picking up my coffee mug, is closed. The 3 words, I heard you, hung in the air of the $1 million kitchen. They landed with a physical weight, sucking all the oxygen out of the room. David's face, which had been pale with a kind of frantic, problem-solving confusion, just collapsed. It was the face of a 10-year-old boy who had just been caught, his hand not just in the cookie jar, but setting the whole house on fire. He looked at me, then at Chloe, then back at me, his mouth opening and closing, no sound coming out. He was completely, utterly broken by 3 simple words. But Chloe was different. She wasn't a child caught in a lie. She was a corporate lawyer who had just been outmaneuvered. Her shock was a split-second flash, like lightning, and then it was gone, replaced by something cold and hard and furious. Her whole posture changed. The mask of the polite, charming daughter-in-law didn't just slip. She ripped it off. You were spying on us, she hissed, taking a step forward. Her voice was low and venomous. You were outside our door, listening. I just looked at her. I didn't defend myself. I didn't need to. Is that what you're focused on? I asked. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence. Not that you were planning to commit a federal crime? You're angry you got caught. It wasn't theft. David finally found his voice. It was a pathetic, cracking whine. Mom, it wasn't like that. We were just going to borrow it. It was a loan. We were going to pay it back. With interest. We just needed it for the house. Pay it back, I repeated. It wasn't a question. It was a dead, flat statement. Yes. Chloe shoved herself in front of David, her body vibrating with a rage he was too weak to show. A short-term loan, something families do for each other. But you had to be dramatic. You had to be spiteful. You had to run to the bank, like some child, and sabotage us. After everything we've done for you. Sabotage, I repeated, tasting the word. Yes, she was shouting now. We give you a home. We give you this beautiful, safe house to live in. We pay the mortgage. We pay the utilities. We pay for every single bite of food that goes into your mouth. You live here for free. There it was. The trigger. The two words that had underpinned every interaction, every polite request, every favor for 15 years. For free. A strange, cold clarity settled over me. The shaking in my hands stopped. The frantic hammering in my chest slowed to a cold, steady beat. I felt the weight of Mark's watch on my wrist, the simple, steel-banded Timex. It was a piece of armor. I looked down and tapped the crystal face with my fingernail. Click. A tiny, sharp sound in the heavy silence. Like I was clocking in for my last, most important job. For free, I said. You're a lawyer, Chloe. You understand contracts. You love billable hours. Let's run the numbers. Let's do. An invoice. David just shook his head, his eyes pleading. Mom, what? What are you talking about? You're not making any sense. You're hysterical. I am not hysterical, I said, and my voice was the voice I used to use in quarterly audits, the one that made junior accountants sweat. I am making perfect sense. For 15 years, I have been your full-time, live-in nanny. I looked at David. I was there when Lucas took his first steps. I was there when he had the stomach flu at 3 a.m. I was the one at the parent-teacher conferences you were too slammed to attend. What is the going rate for a 24/7 high-end nanny in this zip code, Chloe? A good one, with 15 years of experience, who also does homework help and debate prep. Chloe's face was white. She was a statue. For the first time since I'd met her, she had no rebuttal. Let's keep going, I said. I've also been your household manager. I'm the one who schedules the plumbers, the electricians, the landscapers. I'm the one who does the $500 Costco runs every week. I'm the one who manages the pantry, the cleaning supplies, the entire logistics of this 4,000 square foot house. That is a second full-time salary. I paused. I let the words sink in. And then, I said, my gaze landing on the gleaming 6-burner Wolf range, there's private chef. 3 meals a day for your son. And for the last 10 years, all your networking dinners. The partner's salmon I made last night. The Thanksgiving turkeys for 20 people that you took the credit for. The healthy lunches, the post-debate snacks, the coffee that's waiting for you every morning. What's that worth? What's the market rate for a full-time private chef? Mom, that's different, David stammered. He was trying to find his footing, but the floor was gone. That's family. You wanted to do that. Family is just the word you used for free, I snapped. The auditor's voice was gone, replaced by something much harder. But let's be conservative. Let's put a number on it. Nanny, manager, chef. All in one. $100,000 a year. And that, in this market, is a bargain. I looked at David. Multiply that by 15 years, David. You're good with numbers. What's the total? He just stared at me, his eyes wide and blank. He couldn't. $1.5 million, I said. The words landed in the silent kitchen like stones dropped from a great height. David actually flinched. Chloe's eyes widened. She had finally heard a number that impressed her. That, I said, is my billable hours. That is the career I gave up. That is the income I brought into this house, not in a paycheck, but in my life, my labor, my time. I didn't live here for free, Chloe. You did. You built your entire high-powered 2-income life on my back. My unpaid labor is what paid for this quartz countertop. My labor is what paid for your matching Audis. My labor is what built the equity you were going to use to buy your precious lake house. I paid for it all. With 15 years of my life, I let the silence stretch. I let them sit in the ruin of their own balance sheet. David was completely broken. He looked like he was going to be sick. I invested my entire life in this family, I continued, and my voice was finally shaking, not with weakness, but with 15 years of suppressed rage. And that money, Mark's money, the $200,000, that was the only thing left that was mine. It wasn't a nest egg. It was my independence. It was his last promise to me, my never-again fund, and you, after draining $1.5 million of labor from me. You looked at that last tiny bit, and you decided you were entitled to that too. I looked at them. My son, my daughter-in-law. They were strangers, thieves. So, no, David, I'm not calling the bank. I am not fixing this. The bank, I said, picking up my coffee mug, is closed. The silence that followed was a vacuum. It wasn't just quiet. It was the sound of a reality collapsing. David looked like I had physically struck him. He was ashen, his hands trembling. He had no words. He was a 40-year-old man, a tech executive, and he looked like a lost little boy. He was completely, utterly shattered, not just by the confrontation, but by the numbers. The invoice. Chloe, however, Chloe was different. I watched her face. She wasn't shattered. She was calculating. I could see the lawyer's mind working, clicking through the new data. The $1.5 million invoice. She'd already dismissed that as irrelevant, as the hysterical ravings of an old woman. She wasn't processing the past 15 years, she was processing the next 15 minutes. Her eyes darted from me to the iMac, where the bank login screen was still frozen, then to the clock on the oven. 9:08 a.m. The wire for the lake house was due by noon, and in that instant, her panic found its voice. It wasn't the sound of remorse. It was the sound of an animal whose prey had just been snatched from its jaws. You, she stammered, her voice low and shaking, not with fear, but with a furious white-hot rage. You did this just to spite us. Spite, I asked. Yes, you were never going to let us be happy. You've always resented me, always resented our success. You've been waiting for this, haven't you? A way to ruin us. We're going to lose our deposit, Eleanor. We're going to lose the house. That's $50,000 gone, just because you couldn't stand to see us have something beautiful. This is your fault. She was screaming now, her polished corporate mask completely gone, revealing the raw, grasping greed underneath. She hadn't heard a word I'd said about my labor, my life, my sacrifice. She'd only heard the sound of her money, her house, slipping away. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at her, and for the first time, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness. Just a profound, empty pity. No, Chloe, I said, my voice quiet. This is your fault. I turned from the counter, leaving my half-full coffee mug, the one I'd bought at a garage sale, sitting there. I walked out of the kitchen, through the arched doorway, and into the grand two-story foyer. My small, black, wheeled-over night bag was sitting right by the door, exactly where I'd left it when I came downstairs. I heard a sharp, strangled gasp from behind me. It was David. The sight of the packed bag, the physical proof that this wasn't a tantrum, that this was a premeditated, executed plan, was the thing that finally broke him. It was the one piece of data he couldn't ignore. Mom. His voice was a panicked whisper. Mom. What? What is that? A bag? What are you doing? I picked it up. The handle was cool and solid in my hand. I turned to face them. They were huddled in the kitchen doorway, framed like a portrait of disbelief. Mom, no, David said, stumbling forward. He moved to block the front door, his arms spread wide, a desperate, clumsy barrier. Stop this. Just stop. This is insane. Get out of my way, David, I said. It wasn't a request. No, you're being hysterical. You're not thinking clearly, he pleaded, his eyes wild. He was trying to gaslight me, to put me back in the box of the confused old woman. He was trying to regain control. You can't just leave. Where are you even going to go? He looked at my small bag, then back at me, and a cruel, desperate kind of confidence crept into his voice. He thought he'd found his trump card. You have nowhere to go. You've got, what, your freedom money? You think that's going to last? You can't afford to live on your own, Mom. Not in this city. Not anymore. You're 65 years old. You're going to be back in a week. You'll be back as soon as you realize how much a gallon of milk costs. You need us. He stood there, blocking the door, convinced he had just delivered the final, winning argument. He believed with all his heart that my only options were this house or poverty. He believed he was still my only choice, I looked at my son, who I had raised to be a smart, successful man, and I saw in that moment that he was a fool. He was an arrogant fool who, after 15 years, still had no idea who I was. I glanced down at Mark's watch on my wrist. 9:10 a.m. I was right on schedule. "You need us," David repeated, his voice laced with a desperate, cruel certainty. "You'll be back in a week, as soon as you realize how much a gallon of milk costs." I looked at my son, my 40-year-old, successful, executive son, who genuinely believed my survival was tied to his generosity. He saw a frail, 65-year-old woman who couldn't manage a grocery list. He had no idea, not in 15 years, who he was really living with. "Oh, David," I said, and my voice was so full of pity it made him flinch. "When are you going to learn? You and Chloe. Your entire lives, you have mistaken my kindness for weakness. You mistook my service for your necessity." I took a step toward him, and he instinctively braced himself, his arms still spread wide in the doorway, a human wall. "You're right about one thing," I said, adjusting the strap of my bag on my shoulder. "I'm not going to a hotel. I wouldn't waste the money. Hotels are for vacations. I'm not on vacation." I took another step. He was the only thing between me and the door. "I'm going home." His face crumpled in confusion. "What? What does that mean? Mom, stop this. This is your home." "No," I said, my voice as cold and clean as the quartz countertop. "This was my job. This was my 15-year contract. And as of last night, your breach of contract was so profound. My employment is terminated, effective immediately." "What? Are you? You're not making sense," he pleaded. But Chloe, behind him, she understood. Her face had gone a shade of white I'd never seen before. She was a lawyer, and I had just used her language. "What did you do?" she whispered. I looked past my son, at her. "He's right. I'm not going to a hotel." And then I delivered the checkmate, the final, hidden piece of the Gray Fox plan. I just bought a 2-bedroom corner unit condo at Silver Creek Estates. You know, the 55-plus community, the one with the indoor pool and the walking trails. David's arms dropped. He looked like he'd been unplugged. "I put the down payment on it 2 weeks ago," I continued, savoring the words. "The truth, right after Thanksgiving, right after you joked about my nest egg. I called Brenda, my friend Brenda, the CPA. She and her realtor friend got me in for a viewing that Monday. I closed on it last week. I let the full weight of the premeditation land on them. The confused old woman they'd been plotting to rob had been, for weeks, quietly executing a major real estate transaction right under their noses. "It's funny," I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips. "You were so busy, so focused on how you were going to steal my money. It never once occurred to you to ask what I was doing with it." I, David stammered. You bought a condo. In cash," I said. "With Mark's money, my money, the money he left for my freedom. I was just waiting for the right moment to tell you I was moving out. I was going to wait until after Lucas's debate tournament. I didn't want to upset him. But you, David, you and Chloe, with your little plan last night, you just gave me the perfect, clean break." Right on cue, a car horn honked from the driveway. "Beep, beep." I smiled. 9:15. That's my taxi. My new life is running on a schedule, and I hate to be late. I walked forward. "Move, David." He didn't move, he retreated. He stumbled back, out of my way, as if I were glowing with some strange heat. He was terrified of me. I put my hand on the cool, brass handle of the front door. I pulled it open. The bright, cool morning air hit my face, and it felt like the first real breath I'd taken in 15 years. I stepped out onto the porch, pulling my small bag behind me. The wheels made a satisfying click-clack on the bluestone. I walked down the perfect, landscaped path to the waiting cab. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel their eyes on my back. 2 pairs of stunned, uncomprehending eyes, staring from the doorway of the beautiful, immaculate, silent prison they had just inherited. A prison they would now have to clean themselves. I pulled the door of the cab shut, and the thud was the most final sound I'd ever heard. It was the sound of a 15-year-old chapter ending. I didn't look back at the house as the car pulled away. I didn't need to. I had the image of their stunned, uncomprehending faces burned into my memory, and that was enough. That was 3 weeks ago. My new life is quiet. The silence is the first thing I notice every morning. It's not the tense, waiting, don't wake the master's silence of the flex space. It's a deep, peaceful, sunny silence. My new condo is bright. It's a corner unit, just like Brenda said, with a balcony that overlooks a small, green park. I have my own kitchen, smaller than theirs, but everything is exactly where I want it. My garage sale coffee mug sits next to my coffee maker. Mark's old Timex watch sits on my nightstand, next to a book I'm actually reading, not just pretending to. The walls are painted a color I chose, a soft, warm yellow, and my furniture, a mix of secondhand treasures and a few new, comfortable splurges, is mine. It's not luxurious. It's not a 4,000 square foot monument to two people's egos. It's just home. For 3 weeks, my phone was silent. I'd heard nothing from David or Chloe. Not a text, not a call, not an angry voicemail. I'd half expected a letter from Chloe's law firm, some ridiculous posturing threat, but there was nothing. Just the deep, healing quiet. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, the intercom buzzed. The sound was so sudden, it made me jump. No one buzzed me. Brenda had a key. I walked over and pressed the talk button. Hello? A crackle, and then a young, hesitant voice. Grandma, it's Lucas. My heart squeezed. Lucas, my grandson, the one good innocent thing in that whole 15-year mess. I took the bus from school, he stammered. Can I come up? Of course, honey, of course. I buzzed him in. My hands were trembling as I waited by the door. What was this? Was he a scout, an ambassador sent by his parents? When I opened the door, he was just standing there. He looked thin and tired and so awkward, a 15-year-old boy drowning in his own limbs, his backpack hanging off one shoulder. Hey, Grandma, he said, not meeting my eye. Hi, sweetie, come in. He shuffled inside, looking around. He was like a visitor in a museum, his eyes wide, taking in my space. It's really nice here, he said. It's so quiet. It is, isn't it? I smiled. Can I get you something? A soda? I have cookies. Sure. Yeah. He sat at my small 2-person dining table while I got him a Coke, and the cookies store-bought, not homemade. He just sat there, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. So, I said gently, sitting across from him, to what do I owe the honor? Does your dad know you're here? He shook his head, finally looking up. His eyes were troubled. No, I wanted to see you. It's weird at home, Grandma. Weird how? It's a mess, he said, and the words just spilled out of him. Like a real mess. Mom's mad all the time. She's on the phone constantly, yelling at some realtor, I think, about a deposit. He took a shaky breath. And Dad's just not there. Even when he is. He tried to make that salmon thing you make for my debate prep. He burned it, Grandma, like black. The smoke detectors went off, and then he just yelled. He yelled at me about my debate notes. Said he didn't realize. How? Lucas's voice cracked. He looked down. He said he didn't realize you did everything. I just sat there. The validation I had craved for 15 years, the thank you I had never received, had finally arrived. Not from my son, but as a battlefield report from my grandson. I'm sorry, Grandma, Lucas whispered, and his eyes were suddenly wet. I heard them. After you left. Mom was screaming. And Dad just sat on the stairs and cried. And I realized he wasn't just mad about the money. He was lost. He looked right at me, and his gaze was no longer a kid's. It was an adult's. I'm sorry. We treated you like staff. I did too. I just expected you to be there. I'm just sorry. The tears I hadn't shed in that kitchen, in that cab, in 3 weeks, they finally came. I reached across the table and took his hand. It was so much bigger than I remembered. Oh, honey, I said, my voice thick. That is not your fault. None of this was your burden to carry. You were a child. I'm not a child now, he said, his voice hard with a new, unhappy maturity. And it was wrong. We sat there for a long time. I let him eat his cookies. I told him about the indoor pool. I showed him my balcony. I let him just breathe. In a house where no one was screaming. When it was time for him to go, I walked him to the door. I had a small Tupperware container in my hand. It had 2 of the chicken pot pies I'd made for myself that week. "What's that?" he asked. "It's for you," I said. "And you can give the other one to your father. It's got heating instructions on the lid." He looked at the container, then at me. You're still. "I'm still your grandmother," I said firmly. "And he is still my son. But, Lucas, this is not a white flag. It's just pot pie." I gave him a fierce hug. "You can come here anytime you want. You have the address. You just buzz. Understand?" "Yeah," he said, hugging me back, hard. I will." He started to leave, then turned back, his hand on the doorknob. Will he be able to come? Dad, I think he misses you. I think he's really broken." I looked at my grandson, this sweet boy caught in the wreckage his parents had made. "You tell your father," I said, my voice soft but my spine made of steel. "You tell him I love him, and you tell him I'm happy to see him. Anytime." I paused and held his gaze. "But my visiting hours in that house are over. From now on he comes to my house. He comes to this door. And he rings the bell." It was a week later, a Saturday, not 9 a.m., his time, but 2 p.m., my time, after I'd had my lunch and read the paper. The sound of the intercom buzzing was different this time. I wasn't anxious, I was settled. When I opened the door, he looked terrible. He wasn't the slick tech executive. His suit was rumpled, his eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like he'd lost 10 pounds. He was holding the empty, washed Tupperware container in his hand, like some kind of peace offering. "Hi, Mom," he said. His voice was hoarse. "Hello, David," I said. I didn't rush to hug him. I didn't fill the silence. I just stood in my doorway. He held out the container. It was really good. The pot pie. "Thank you." "You're welcome." He just stood there in the hallway, this 40-year-old man, a stranger in a suit, waiting to be invited in. "Would you like to come in for a cup of coffee?" I asked, the same way I would for a neighbor. "Yes, please, I'd like that." He sat where Lucas had sat, at my small 2-person table. I made him a cup of coffee in my simple machine. I put the mug down in front of him. He stared into the cup. "Mom, I'm so sorry." I sat down opposite him. I didn't say, "It's okay." I didn't say, "I forgive you." I just waited. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice finally breaking. I didn't see you. For 15 years, I just saw what you did. And I took it. We both did. And then we tried to take the rest." He looked up at me, his eyes swimming. And that invoice, the $1.5 million, you were right. You were right about all of it. I'm lost. The house it's just a building. It's cold. And Chloe. He shook his head. She's still just mad about the money, about the lake house. She still doesn't get it. "But you do?" I asked, my voice soft. "I think so," he said, his voice choked. I think I'm starting to." And that, I knew, was the beginning. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a happy ending. It was just a start. A new, fragile, honest start. On my terms. That was 6 months ago. Today, I'm sitting on my balcony. It's spring, the park below is green, and the flower boxes I planted are overflowing with red and yellow geraniums. Brenda is here, sitting across from me. We're not drinking coffee. We're drinking a very nice, chilled Sauvignon Blanc. We're laughing about a terrible movie we saw at the community center. My son visits. He rings the bell. Every Sunday. Sometimes he brings Lucas. Sometimes he just comes alone. He sits at my table, and he talks, and I listen. Our relationship isn't what it was. It's not that warm, blind, all-consuming mother-son bond. It's something realer. It's adult. It's respectful. It's built on new, solid ground. I looked down at Mark's old Timex on my wrist. For 15 years, I thought my job was to be the invisible foundation for my family's life. I was the flex space, the person who bent to fit everyone else's needs. I forgot that I was allowed to be the architect of my own. I used to look at this watch and think of the promise I made to him to protect his gift. But as I sat there, on my own balcony, in my own home, the sun warm on my face, I realized I'd finally understood. The promise wasn't to him, it was to me. It was the promise of my own freedom. Sometimes, you have to remind the people you love that your dignity isn't just another asset on their balance sheet. You have to show them, clearly and without apology, that your life is yours. So let me ask you, if life handed you a brand new, unwritten page, would you have the courage to turn to it? If this story resonated with you, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear which city you're listening from. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in the hardest of times.